Welcome viewers and subscribers. Please remember to like, share and subscribe.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness says many Jamaicans are finding it hard to cope due to the rising cost of living brought about by inflation. He notes that consumers are becoming frustrated by this reality.
Serious. It is destructive. It has an impact on you psychologically that you're not even aware. It makes consumers angry when you go with an expectation that this is the price of the commodity that I'm going to purchase. And then when you go to actually purchase it, the price is higher than what you expect. And then when you turn around and look at your income hasn't moved. So it means that either you have to forego it or consume less. Either case, your welfare and well-being is reduced. And that's the danger of inflation. If, as consumers, you are faced with this reducing basket and a reduction in your welfare, you're going to get angry. You're going to get frustrated. And who do you take that out on? You take that out on government.
Mr. Holness says despite citizens being angry and upset, the government has performed credibly in its response to their needs.
You may have a resistance in your mind to the fact, but if you were to remove biases and colored perspectives, you would have to come to that conclusion. When have you ever heard of a government of Jamaica going through a crisis like what we went through between 2020 and 2022? And immediately coming out of that crisis, our unemployment rate is the lowest it has ever been. Whenever have we been in a crisis, whether it is a hurricane or oil price crisis, whatever it is, and your government was able to find $40 billion. The entire package of care that we gave out through that time is $100 billion. People who lost income because they had to stay home during the pandemic, they got a check to supplement their income. Almost 400,000 Jamaicans got a grant. All they had to do is sign up for it. When electricity prices went up, we gave a small subsidy.
He urges citizens to be rational and avoid being misled.
So I do listen very carefully to the expressions of frustration, and I understand it because inflation has that impact on the psyche and outlook of the electorate. But I urge you, be rational. Always seek context. Don't be led by what you see in front of you. Look behind it. Look at the broader picture, because you hold in your hands a very important power, and that is to determine your future. And if you determine your future on falsehoods, if you determine your future on misinformation, if you consume some of the nonsense that I see people listening to, people who should know better, you will destroy your future.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness. Issues causing delays at the Kingston Freeport Terminal are expected to be addressed by next month. The management of Kingston Freeport Terminal Limited said a meeting was held with the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association about vessel delays at the facility. The company acknowledged the inconvenience the delays pose to the business sector, especially as the Christmas season approaches, stating that the delays have been creating challenges for importers and exporters. The entity pointed to challenges with vessels operated by certain shipping lines. It said the primary challenge is an increase in transshipment volumes from certain shipping lines. Their feedering network has not been able to keep pace with the recent influx of containers. This has led to congestion at the terminal, despite efforts to keep the domestic market supply chain flowing efficiently. The agency said it maintains the constant communication with the shipping lines, providing them with the necessary data to expedite a resolution. Meantime, President of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, Sidney Thwaites, said it's expected that the situation will be resolved by mid-November.
We had a conference call with KFTL. The port is a big transshipment port. Over 80% of what goes through our port is transshipment, means it's going to another destination. So they'll have vessels come in, drop off. That's in the region on a feeder system. They're having an increase in the transshipment mainline products coming in and not being matched up with the outbound on the feeder lines. So it's creating an accumulation of containers on the port, and they're having a space challenge on the port. The impact is that we've had vessels in the port that have been delayed in offloading. It also means that some of those vessels are going to be diverted to other locations and have to be transloaded onto other vessels, which could cause a delay in the receipt of goods.
President of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, Sidney Thwaites. Minister with responsibility for digital transformation, Senator Dr. Dana Morris-Dixon, says the Data Protection Act will be implemented in phases starting December 1. This as some entities have requested more time to get their companies ready. The senator says discussions are ongoing with government agencies and departments, as well as the private sector.
The Data Protection Act comes into effect on December 1, 2023. Now, there's been a lot of our companies have worked really hard to get ready for December 1. And a lot of our government entities have been working really hard to get ready for December 1. But there are many that are struggling a little bit in that regard. We've had consultations with the private sector, and I thank the private sector for their openness and their open dialogue on where the challenges are. And they've indicated that some of their members and some of our private sector leaders are not ready as yet for the full implementation.
The Data Protection Act, which was passed in 2020, provides guidelines on how personal data should be handled in physical and electronic form. Dr. Morris-Dixon says companies can begin submitting applications once the Act becomes effective in December.
And so we are looking at how we can phase the implementation in, and we will give more details on that in the coming weeks in terms of how we will phase it in. But the legislation does say that the Act comes into effect on December 1, and it will. And we will be taking applications at that time for our data processors to apply.
Meanwhile, the minister with responsibility for digital transformation says government is working to finalize the regulations that accompany the National Identification System NIDS by year end. She explains that once the regulations are finalized, they will be laid in Parliament.
Where we are now, we are awaiting the regulations, the finalization of the regulations. So we have the law, but you have to have regulations around how the NIRI and the NIRA will be operating, and NIRA will be our National Identification and Registration Authority, and you have NIRI, which is going to be overseeing all of the work that is done in relation to the ID, the printing of it, the storing of the info and all of that. And then layered on top of that, we have a new data protection framework, which is going to embed certain requirements in terms of protecting data.
She says it's anticipated that the distribution of NIDS cards will begin in December.
Then we can start to have our cards printed and produced, and our Jamaicans can go. Obviously, in the first part, we're going to go slow. It's not going to be, we want 1 million people in 1 year or anything like that. We will start with the site that we have at CSO, at Central Sorting Office, and over time we will build out to other locations where the NIDS cards can be had all across Jamaica through our post offices, and so that will take time. So we're not going out there and saying people come right away. It's over time that we will be rolling out the application process.
Minister with responsibility for digital transformation, Dr. Dana Morris-Dixon. Meantime, Program Director for NIDS, Warren Vernon, says the focus for the next few months is preparing more enrollment centers.
Our focus for the next couple of months is to support policymakers in getting the authority established. In addition a lot of emphasis are being placed now on preparing more enrollment centers. For this year, we already out for tender for 20 Jamaica post offices that we are modifying to facilitate enrollment. We're also placing a lot of emphasis on adjusting the application. You would be aware that we had a pilot of the system earlier this year, and we got a lot of feedback from the public, and we are currently updating the system. So our target is that by the end of this year, it is our intention to get the system ready so that the authority will be able to take it to the next level.
Program Director for NEDS, Warren Vernon.